Bible class for this morning. We'll turn to Genesis chapter 13, and what I want to look at is the title of the lesson is God's long-term promise, or long-range promise. Long-range promise, and something that we kind of discussed Wednesday with the team. I'm sure they can have a double dose because they barely were listening to Bible class anyway. But anyway, that's a joke. It's kind of a joke. Anyway. Basically what I want to look at is the promise that God made to Abraham and the long-reaching effect of that promise. You know, because when we look at Abraham, and I thought it was really interesting when I was reading on it. We look at Abraham, and as you study the Bible and you get more and more, deeper into the Bible, like sometimes you can look at the scriptures from two perspectives. If I say it like this, like you can look at the scriptures from like an overall perspective, and you see like God's overall plan, and then you start looking at stuff from a small scale perspective with the individuals and God's individual relationship with individual people, And so what with this lesson, I want to look at from a wider scope, but focusing in more just on Abraham and like starting with Abraham, kind of opening up, if that makes sense. That's just the way I understood it. Can't do the whole talking for nothing. But it's actually Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 1. And it talks about, it says, "Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." And I remember teaching this lesson before, but like when you look at this, there is no previous mention of Abraham having any relationship with God. When you go back to previous chapters, like chapter 11, that's what it goes down the genealogy after Babel, and it talks about Abraham, his father, and their family construct and things of that nature. There is no mention of him having any previous relationship with God. I won't say yay or nay, but what I find powerful here is that God comes to Abraham one day, this day, and he tells him, "Come from among your people. I'm gonna take you somewhere." And we think we think about God. We think about God from a in a retrospective way. We think about all that God has already done. We think about all that all this record that He's left, as far as Him saving the Israelites from the Egyptians, and Him having David triumph over Goliath, and all the various things. We talk about Jesus, we talk about the disciples. So we see all this stuff in retrospect. We look back at all this stuff and look at all this record and say, God is powerful, God is great. But at this time, this is the beginning. You know what I mean? This is the beginning of God working out His plan. And so when God comes to Abraham this day and He says, "I'm gonna take you somewhere," Abraham doesn't know anything about what God is about to do. He doesn't know anything about this plan that God has. He doesn't even see it come to fruition. None of that. It's just God says, "Hey, follow me. I'm gonna take you somewhere. I'm gonna make you great. I'm gonna make your family. I'm gonna make your family great." You know what I mean? Like your family's gonna bless the nation, the family of the world. Now keep in mind, he has no children, and he's old. And so, and I want to really pull that out because it's so important, so that you understand why Abraham has a relationship with God that he does, and what kind of man Abraham is. Because we talk about, and we're going to talk about later, we're going to get into it, as far as having faith. Because that's what the lesson is about having faith. But you have to understand the kind of faith that Abraham showed. You know what I mean? Like He's taking you to a plan. He's telling you, "Follow me blind." That's what God is saying. Come on, I'm gonna take you somewhere. You have no idea where you're going. You're leaving your family, your place which you're comfortable at. He said, "Man, come on, let's go." And he giving him all these promises, telling him all this stuff that's gonna happen. And like I said, Abraham not no youngster. He's not no like little small child or like no 20-year-old man. Have his first mustache and beard. Like this dude is old. I mean, he been around for a while. And we look at the Bible. Sometimes people look at the Bible and say, oh, back in the day they used to live 500 and 800 years and all this kind of stuff. So you think, oh, well, he ain't even 100 yet. He ain't even old, but they still age the same way we age now. You know what I mean? Like, just because they had ass a long time. I mean, like, he's only 100? He's a baby. Like 100 is still 100 years. He still knows some stuff. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And he ain't even 100 years old yet, but he at this time the Bible is clear that he's an older man. And so for him to show that kind of faith, and that's the point I want to make. I wanted to highlight the faith that he showed and why God considered him a friend. And so verse 4, it says that Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So I'm talking about he was 75 years old. 75 real years too. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. Verse 6, and Abram passed through the land to the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Morah, and the Canaanites was there in the land. And the Canaanite was there in the land, was then in the land, I'm sorry. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him. And so he tells him, he says, unto your seed I'm going to give this land. The man is 75 years old. He has no kids. He has no children. This ain't no lesson in China you've never heard before. But it's important that you really, as Brother talks about in this lesson, understand and gain understanding to understand and really comprehend perfectly what we're dealing with here. Because like, sometimes it's so many majestic things that you read about in the Bible, you kind of lose, if you're not careful, you will lose the substance of it. It's no longer like awesome to you, the stuff, because you read it so many times, you believe it, it's just what it is, like commonplace. They walked across the ocean, they walked across the Red Sea on dry ground. You read that enough times, you saw the movie, and it's like, yeah, man, they did that. You believe it, and it's like God rescued. But you have to remember how awesome that is. That's not, because it becomes, not that it becomes common in the sense of what God can do, but it becomes common in the story itself. And you forget how awesome that is. How awesome what it is that God has done. And so when you look at that and you see the faith that Abraham showed, I want to drop over to chapter 17. This is the beginning of their walk.
Chapter
17, I'm sorry.
All right.
And moving on to chapter 17, Genesis 17. It says, and when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared unto Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect. Now this is 24 years since they first left. He says, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And so God makes this covenant with Abraham. He changes his name. All this is before he even has his son, and it's like when you read this, and this is what kind of brought up the thought that I was thinking about when I was talking about bringing this lesson. He says in verse 7 and 8, I want to highlight that. He says, I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in their generation, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And so, when you look at the scriptures as they continue to progress from this point, you look at the story of Moses. You know, he's an Israelite. He's brought up in Egypt, in the home of Pharaoh. You know, he breaks off when he sees God in the desert. He speaks to God in the desert in the form of a burning bush. You know, and he picks him to go out and do some work. You know, to redeem his people. But when you think about that, God does this because he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And before there was Jacob, there was Isaac. Before there was Isaac, there's Abraham. There is no name mentioned before Abraham. And it's because of the promise in this covenant that God made with Abraham that all these other things proceed. You know what I mean? All these things happen. So God rescuing, this great story of God rescuing the Israelites out of Egypt is because of the promise that he made to Abraham. You know, when Israel goes out to battle with the 5 kings, they are victorious and God is with them because of what we just read in Genesis chapter 17. He says, I will be their God. That's the reason why. It's because of the faith and the relationship that he had with Abraham, and all these other things persist. When we read about Joshua and the battle of Jericho, you know, and the walls came down, the reason why God was with them is because he made a promise to Abraham. You know what I mean? When you read about the judges and the people turned their back on God, and then he remembered them, heard their cry, and he sent a judge unto them to rescue them from their oppressors. The reason why he remembers is because of the promise that he made to Abraham. Mm-hmm. You know, you read about the kings and all these fights that they had and the things they had to overcome. You read about David, and people look at David like, oh, David is great, and David is this symbol of kingship in the symbol of the king, you know what I mean, eternal, which is Christ. But the reason why God is with David, or that he minds David, is because of the promise that he made to Abraham.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? And that was the thrust that I really wanted from the lesson. Is because when it comes all the way down, you talk about Daniel, you talk about Samuel, you talk like you name it, name anybody in the scriptures, and it's because the reason why God has a relationship with that person is because of the promise that he made to Abraham. You know, and so I wanted to reference that because it shows two things. One, that God never forgets. God never forgets his promise, and he never will. He's always going to keep it intact. And the other promises and the other covenants that he made with other people, he kept them in mind. When he told David, I'll make sure that you have a name, you have somebody on the throne forever. He kept his promise. Regardless to what other people did afterwards, people were removed. If you were wicked, you were removed, whatever the case may be. But God kept his promise. He never forgets.
That's right.
And so when you look at that, and you try to apply that to your own personal life, and that's what really, when you're studying the Bible, you want to understand the history, obviously. But the reason why you want to understand the history is so that you can apply it to you personally, so that you can develop your own personal faith in your own personal relationship with God. You know, it's like having a relationship with your own father. Your father is around many, many years before you exist. You know what I mean? There's certain things about him you don't know.
That's right.
You know, when you're a child, there's certain things that he won't tell you. You know, because you're a child, you're not ready for it. It's not the information you need to be privy to. But as you get older, you may sit down, if you have a relationship with your father, and you sit down and you talk to him as a grown man to man, he may tell you certain things. He'll say, man, when I was this age, I did this. When this happened, you know, when you remember this time that happened to you, this is what I was thinking. Wow, really? I was scared out of my mind. I didn't think, you were scared? Yeah. You know, whatever. I was so angry. Me and your mama almost split up. What? What happened? And these things, you start learning more and more about your father, and your relationship intensifies. You add a layer of intimacy with your father that you didn't have as a child as you grow. And it's the same thing in Christianity. Like, you use the record that you have in the Bible to intensify your relationship with God. It should. It should further fortify your trust in God, understanding him. And so when you're looking at this, And like I said, you know, and it's important that you don't miss small details. Anybody have anything I've been talking? Anybody have anything they want to add? Amen. Amen. But and so when you look and you see this, number one, God doesn't forget his promises. Number two, God rewards faith. And like I said, these are things that we've discussed many times, but you want to be able to look at this, and this is proof. I mean, we trust God, obviously, we believe in God, but God left all this record so that you will continue to believe, so that you will intensify your faith, so that you will establish, that you be established in your faith and trust toward God. Because at the end of the day, all of us, we have a certain number of days that we live on the earth. And however many days, like, as long as you're living, there's always going to be new challenges. You know what I mean? You've gone through whatever you've gone through, you 50, you 60, whatever, and you've gone through various things up until that point in your life that make you say, man, you know what? I can never leave God. God has been good to me, da, 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 da. You know what I mean? Amen. But, like, there's still things to come. You know what I mean? As long as you're alive, you say, okay, well, you don't plateau at 50 or 60, and it's like, well, it's just clear from there. We ain't no more challenges, just kind of hold on until the end. No, you still got stuff that is coming your way that you don't really know what the situation is, how it's going to challenge you, whatever the case may be. And so you have to make sure that your faith in God is real.
Yes. If
that makes sense. You see what I'm saying? Because there's a difference between, I'm coming your way, my brother, there's a difference between intellectual faith in that sense. And that I'm using that as a term. Like, I understand that God is good, that God is the creator of the world. And I understand that concept, like that, yeah, okay, I accept that. But it's a whole other ballgame when it becomes an intimacy where it's like, I trust God personally.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I may have all the facts as far as what God has done, but I have to trust God personally. Like, man, you know, God is looking out for me. You know what I mean? I love God because he's good to me. Because at the end of the day, that's what it has to be. We collectively, we come together, we in Bible class, we at worship, and we all say we're in a family. But even in a family, like, you have to develop a relationship with your parents individually. You know what I mean? In order for the relationship to really mean something. You can say, oh, we all together, we all having a good time, but when something go down, you have to be able to say, my mama or my daddy love me, not love us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, loving us is cool, but to say, my mama loved me, because, like I said, you have challenges that are individual to you, and you have to know that they're going to be there for me during my individual issues.
Hey,
my brothers and sisters may not have nothing to do with what's going on with me right now. They good. I'm in bad shape. But, like, the fact that I can call my mom and say, hey, I need to talk to you, and she ain't going to talk to them about what's going on with me.
Right.
Or my dad not going to tell them my business. It's between me and him, and I can trust him because he care about me. Next to that becomes an intimacy. So anyway, pass it by my brother.
You're a father. You're a father. Abraham was a father. And this is where you're going because God is our father. And so, I mean, I thought about, when you just said it, I thought about Javier's father. I thought about his dad. You know, his faith should be strong. It should be strong because of what he reads and the examples that he gets. He should have strong faith. The things that happen to us shake us up, and inherently they strengthen our faith. And if we don't have faith when those things shake us up, they should, because that could be our last day on earth. And so the answers to the things that are hidden are in darkness, and God knows the answers. But the things that you as a father has already experienced, you impart them to your kids. You say, this is what I did when I was young. You sit them at the kitchen table. I did this when I was young. And it's not the goal. Your end goal is not to be who you are now, but you need to get to where you need to get. And this is what I did. You see what I'm saying? And so you can't show a kid everything or child everything or even a grown cat everything, because some people get baptized and they might be 79 years old. That's their new birth. You know, so Daniel 2 and 22 says, he revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and in the light dwelleth in him. So it goes back to God. It goes back to getting the knowledge, get the understanding, as Brother Ozan taught this morning. The Proverbs talk about understanding. And so this is what basically Abraham did for us. There's nothing more he can do for us. He already did it. It's already written in the Word of God. So this is what you do for your families. You already done it. It's gone. It's past. This is what I did for my family. Now it's just a not a rehearsal, but a re-instruction to solidify, to continue to solidify. So that's what I'm getting at your lesson, is that we need to be able to learn and not keep on making the same mistakes over. Amen. Like Abraham made two mistakes the same. He made two mistakes. Called his wife his what, I forget what it was, really, his sister twice. Which, you know, it is his sister, you know. But you know, he did that twice. But why we gotta keep on making the same mistakes over and over again?
Amen.
Over and over again, when we can not make those mistakes, because one mistake might leave you, you might get away with one mistake, but you make another mistake. You know, I mean, I'm just saying, physical realm, physical, spiritual, mental, you might end up losing something, an eye, a limb, or whatever. I don't know. It might be in a wheelchair. Who knows?
That's right.
You know what God got, you know, down the road for. But that will teach us, you know, and we'll learn better from that experience, because now we got something to look at. Oh, I ain't got no arm now. You see what I'm saying? So whatever the case might be, I'm not saying that's, you know, we're supposed to learn from those mistakes and things we've done.
Amen.
I was looking at Luke 16, verse 22. You know, mentioning this subject, it says, "And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried." The same fate that Abraham had, the poor man had, the beggar had, and he was brought to Abraham's bosom. It says in verse 23, "And in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and see Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame." Here we see where, you know, Abraham, as you were mentioning, was called, separated, and God told him, "Out of you shall all nations, many nations shall be blessed, all families of the earth shall be blessed." And he has him positioned in paradise to comfort those who get there in paradise, and also he's the leader also in paradise, and he calls him Father Abraham, and he gives him instructions. And I want to go down to verse 28. Or verse 27. He says, Then he said, I pray thee, therefore, Father, that thou wouldest send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brethren, that they may testify unto them, lest they also come into this place of torment. Again, we have 2 fathers here. He's calling him Father Abraham, and then he's mentioning my father's house. And so 2 different fathers. If his father's house is not associated with the faith of Abraham, or the family of Abraham, which is those who walk by faith on earth, then they're not going to make it to that place. He gives them the answer in verse 29. Verse 29 says, Abraham said unto him, They have Moses and the prophets, let him hear them. And he said, Nay, Father Abraham, but if one went unto them from the dead, they will repent. And so that's the instructions. Verse 31, and he said unto him, If they hear not Abraham, not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. Again, he tells them the family that they need to listen to, because they're the ones that walk as the same faith that I walk. So that's just an example of who we're going to meet if we stay faithful when we get to paradise.
Amen.
He's one of the leaders that is down there that knows the details of what goes on.
Amen.
Amen.
You know, that leads me to the next point that I was going to make, actually. You turn to Galatians chapter 3. I guess we can start at verse 1. It's fine. Galatians chapter 3, starting at verse 1. The Bible says, O foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you, that you should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ hath been evidently set forth, crucified among you? This is only what I learned of you. Receive you the Spirit by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? Are you so foolish? Having begun in the spirit, are you now made perfect by the flesh? Have you suffered so many things in vain, if it be ye yet in vain? He therefore that ministered you the Spirit, and worked the miracles among you, doeth he it by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? He says, even as Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham? And the scriptures foreseeing that God would justify the heathen through faith, preached before the gospel unto Abraham, saying, in thee shall all nations be blessed. So then they which are of faith are blessed with faithful Abraham. And so, and like I said, this is the other half of the lesson I was looking at. Like our relationship with God is based on the promise that God made to Abraham, even ours. You know what I mean? Like God, we come to the portion of God's plan where salvation has come to all the world. You know what I mean? But it's only through faith. You have to have faith like Abraham in order to have a relationship with God.
Amen.
But even that comes from the covenant that God made to Abraham. Go ahead, my brother.
No, I just want to ask one question.
Yes, sir.
A man must have faith.
Absolutely.
So if a person sit and tell you, I don't have no faith in you or what you're talking about, and you're talking about the gospel, well, it's time for you to get up and leave. Okay.
Amen. That's right. Amen.
Because if you don't believe, then there is no hope. There is no hope. The powerful thing about that, you may mention that. The powerful thing about that is that and that's why I was talking. At the beginning, as we talked about, we want to look at it from a wide range scope, and we want to start small, micro, looking at Abraham, and then we're going to spread it out and widen the scope. God blessed the children of Israel, that physical nation, because who their father was.
Amen.
You see him say this all the time, and it's so important that you understand it. He says, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." He said, you probably count so many. I can't even count how many times that was said. God said that, and to all the various generations that came after 3, 4, 5, 6 generations after they left, even after they left Egypt, God was still referencing the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the reason why is because the reason why I'm dealing with you, the reason why I'm talking to y'all now, the reason why I'm coming to your rescue, the reason why I'm recommending you is because of what I've promised these 3 men.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
And so, like, Israel was arrogant in their position with God. You know what I mean? They started to think, well, because we are, great nation Israel, we have the great God, whatever. And they had idolaters and they did all kind of worship on the hill and all this kind of stuff. But they still knew at the end of the day who they were. You know what I mean? Like, you use your status as God's only nation when it was convenient for you. But, you did other dirt because you wasn't rich. It's no different than, say, if you have a child that comes from a wealthy family. You know what I mean? You know who your daddy is, but you ain't no good. Your daddy good people. You know what I mean? People respect your father. And he's worked hard. You know what I mean? He's a prosperous man. Everybody respect him. He has resources, all that kind of jazz. You know what I mean? But you're not. You dirty, but you know who your daddy is. So then you try to use the respect and the name that your daddy has garnered when you want to, when you need to, when you're trying to take advantage.
Good
You
point.
think, oh man, I'm good. I'm my daddy's son. That kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But you don't follow the principles that your daddy laid out for you. You know what I mean? It's the same concept with Israel. Israel felt like, they knew their history. They knew where they come from. They knew the things that God had done. They knew, like I said, they just like we read Judges, they had scrolls that had the history of Judges. They were oppressed, and then God would come and rescue. But it's the way that they saw it. You see what I'm saying? When they say the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, their glory is in the temple. But to an extent, they understand who the temple belongs to. You see what I'm saying? Like, we good. Like, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they know who he is. They just take it for granted. You know what I mean? And so, but God continued to bless Israel because of the physical Israel, because of the promise that he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at that time. And that's powerful because regardless, like, of course, those that were evil, they were reprimanded. There'll come a day where the sword will come, the famine. They will be conquered. They will be taken away. Because God is also a God of justice. He's not going to let you just get away with dirt. You know, I'm going to repay. That much is no doubt. But the nation as a whole, God would rescue. Like, everybody wasn't like doing right when he came and rescued from you know, when you read Judges, everybody's like, we all like right. No, I mean, it's just that I remember, I hear your cry, I hear your desperation, I see the situation you're in, and because of the promise that I made, I'm gonna rescue. That's it. And then they go back and they do foolishness again. And they say, I'm gonna let y'all be taken over. And I hear you cry again. So, man, you know what? I remember the promise that I made. I'll rescue. And so, when you look at that, and then you're going all the way to Galatians chapter 3, and that's the power. I'm sorry, I'm trying to you know, keep you on track because I started. But the power of Christianity, or one of the things that's powerful about Christianity, is the sight that it gives.
Amen.
You know what I mean? Because, like people in the world, they think that Israel is like blessed, like physical Israel. They think that there's like holiness involved with it. Yeah, amen.
Yes.
Today, like they think that there's some type of separation between the promise that God made to Israel and Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand that Christianity is the fulfillment of God's promise.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it is the manifestation of what God was talking about from the very beginning. He wasn't talking about the physical nation was never what God was like really worried about because He destroyed them.
That's right.
It was those in it that had the faith of Abraham that God was concerned with. It's always been that way. You know what I mean? And so when it comes to now, those who have the faith of Abraham are the seed of Abraham. They are the children of Abraham.
That's right.
And the relationship that he had, and that same promise that he made, I will have an everlasting covenant with them.
Mm-hmm.
I will give them a land as a possession, and I will be their God. That promise that he made is the promise that he fulfills in us that have obeyed the gospel today.
That's right.
It's because of that promise that the whole plan came to fruition, and that He is our God. You know what I mean? And that's the eureka of the lesson.
Amen.
Like, bang, wow. You know what I mean? And like it's such a simple thing, but it's something that you have to remember. You know what I mean? It's something that you have to like take in and understand. That God, He keeps His promises.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And and the relationship that God has with Abraham, even with the stuff that the foolishness, even with the foolishness that he pulled off, like he did some silly things. You know what I mean? But even regardless of that, he still tells Abimelech, like, you know, I'll have him pray for you. You know what I mean? Because
that's right.
I made a promise to this man. Like, because God knows who he is. God knows the faith that he has. And so I have a relationship with him. He's my friend.
That's right.
I'm not friends with y'all. I'm friends with him.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? We have a covenant. We have an agreement, he and I. I'm going to look out for him. He never comes into the full, like, Abraham never received the full, like, the full fruition of the promise that he made. You know what I mean? Like, this land and these people and all that. He don't ever see that. He dies. But he believes God. And he walks with God for for multiple years. You know, and I like the fact that you have this chronicle of Abraham walking with God for multiple years, because it mirrors our lives. Like, we have to walk with God all our life. Now, he started at 75, but like, you have to walk with God your whole life. And there's going to be a lot of ups and downs and hills and valleys and dips and turns that you're going to take in life, but you have to have the faith that Abraham had to say, where he leads, I'll follow. Because that's what it is. Abraham blindly follows God.
Sure.
He hears the instruction that God gives him. He does them. That's it. He don't think about it. It ain't like no hesitations. You know what I mean? It's like whatever here and now. But I'm sorry. Can't walk in here. Brother Green's getting to see. Can't walk in here. Look like highway to heaven, man.
That's it.
But anyway. like a landing.
That's it.
But forgive me, I don't understand it. But
I have a question.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Man, me with this. I reset my.
Galatians 3, verses 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
Okay, for it, verse 10 and 11. Galatians 3. For as many as are under the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, curses everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God, it is evident that the just shall live by faith. And so, if it's just as the Bible says in James, that if you offend in one area, you offend in all. The law was a rule book. It just tells you what's right and what's wrong. It gives you instructions. That's what it does. Now the instructions lead you in righteousness because they tell you what it is that's right in the sight of God. So the law in itself is righteous. It's good.
That's right.
Because it tells you this is what God wants from you. Without it, you don't know. You don't know what God wants. So if you want to be right, in the sight of God, you want God to look upon you with favor, these are the rules. That's what the law does. Now, if you break one of the rules, you're guilty.
Right.
And that's the downside of the law, I guess, is that if you violate in one area, you're guilty. There is no like big rules or little rules when it comes to the law. Like if you're a violator, you're guilty. You're guilty before God if you break any of these rules, any of them at any time for whatever reason. Like you're guilty. That's what it is. And so that's the curse. He says, but that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God is evident, for the just shall live by faith. So it's through your faith in God that one is saved. It's not by the strict obedience to the rules. Because then it comes to the point, and that's when we look at Romans chapter 4. Matter of fact, we can go there. Romans chapter 4, it explains just that. Chapter 4 and verse 1. He says, what shall we then say that Abraham our father as pertains to the flesh hath found? He says, for if Abraham were justified by works, he had whereof to glory, but not before God. He says, but what said the scripture? Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness.
That's right.
Now to him that worketh is the reward, not reckoned of grace, but of debt. And so that's the key. The law, he says, so that you're not justified by the law, the just shall live by faith. Mm-hmm. It's through faith in God that one is justified before God. It's not that way. It's a matter of grace, because man, just because you believe me, I'm gonna look out for you. It's not a matter of I did A through Z, and so now you owe me.
That's right.
You can't be justified. You can't be justified before God like that, because you can't step to God like that. You can't step to God talking about what I did and like what you owe me.
That's right.
And it's crazy. Sidebar. It's crazy that people teach that. People teach like their doctrine when they talk about you got to claim it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a part of the doctrine. Is that like, okay, God, I did this, this, and this. Now you owe me this. I've heard it taught.
God don't owe you anything.
Amen.
Right.
Amen, my brother. But that's
right.
I've heard that taught like verbatim. Like, and people scream, yes! They scream with a mighty shout. And it's like, you're totally wrong. It's just it's crazy. But you say, well, because I did this, 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 and this. God, you owe me this. And they like, you supposed to go to God like that. They taught him, and it was crazy. It was like one of them like mega churches. I can't remember. It was just outlandish. You have to go to God and be like, now I've done this. Now you owe me this. It's the covenant that we entered. Like they say, you enter a covenant with God, and if you God don't have to agree apparently, but like if you just say it, you speak it into existence, and then like.
Oh, that's hard. That is horrible
doctrine. But to answer the question, my brother, like we're justified by faith. It's a gift, and it always will be a gift, because before you can give, the primary principle is this: before you can give anything to God, God already gave to you.
That's right.
You can't ever
Even
outgive God life.
Amen.
Life. You can't come and step to God because God gave you everything.
That's right.
I mean, you can't tip the balance back in your favor. Like, okay, I think you owe me now. Like, in no possible way. The law, you can't say because I did right, you owe me. Because you don't have that kind of righteousness. You don't have that kind of power.
That's right.
So like I said, so the just shall live by faith. It's because I trust God and I believe in God that God will recompense me in that sense with salvation because you trust me, because you do what I tell you to do. That's the reason why. Like I said, because we have a relationship. It's not because I owe you anything, because you ain't got nothing I want. Like I got multiple hands on.
Amen.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch them all. Okay, Javier, we don't just move around.
I just want to read 2 Timothy 4, verse 7. He said, I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord the righteous judge shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them that love his appearing. Now he said it's laid up for him a crown of righteousness. A crown of righteousness. In Revelations 4, verse 10, it says, the 24 elders fall down before him that sat on the throne and worship him, that live forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. So that crown that they had, it was cast before the throne because they recognized that we received it because of you. All the crown of righteousness that Paul mentioned is because of you that we have it. And it's because of you that all things were made, and for your pleasure that were created. So we have to have that recognition as well. And I was thinking, I believe in the scriptures, there's another verse that talks about concerning, you're unprofitable servants. If you've done all that he's commanded, you're still unprofitable, considered as unprofitable servants. And I believe, that is in Luke. But that's just an example of the scriptures where it teaches us how our mindset should be towards what we have, what we receive.
Man. I think that's
17,
Luke 17:10. Yeah, let me read that real quick. Luke 17:10, where the scriptures talk about that. It says, so likewise you, when you shall have done all those things which are commanded you, you say, we are unprofitable servants, we have done that which was our duty to do.
keep Amen.
Like he provides you everything that you have. So like, why would it be such a marvelous thing that you do? He tells you to do. This is a concept.
No, it's like you boast about something that you got, but you don't really know that God is the reason that you got it. And you're saying, I got it. But, I digress on that point. The point is I want to make that you were talking about how people interpret what they believe the Old Testament to say and what they do. And, you claim it and it's yours and so forth. Well, there's one thing that the Bible says about this curse. The Bible says that that Christ was a curse for us, and so that even that physical, in back in the day, you would see people hanging people. They hung people because they got that from somewhere. You hung a person on a tree because you didn't just do that because you just figured out that's a good thing to do. You got that because you believe that was your chosen way to show God worked before people. God is showing you that was something that I'm showing you. And I'm not saying what race it was. You got plenty of people, black, white, yellow, whatever, got hung on trees. But this right here is something that we go back to the Old Testament. You look at when this thing happened, they had to be taken down before the sun went down. You couldn't leave them on a tree. You couldn't leave them hung. You couldn't leave them that hang. And you look at the Old Testament and some of the battles that they had in the Old Testament. And I look at Joshua. When Joshua went to do his thing, he did what God said to do. He wasn't like Saul when he went into to kill everything in that town they're supposed to win and kill. He brought back Ahag. He brought back some animals, and Samuel had to kill him. And so when Joshua went in and took a city, he would he would kill the king. Was the last one he would kill almost. He would kill him, then he would hang him on a tree. But he would take him down before the sun went down. Because to show him on a tree is that he was a cursed thing. He was a cursed thing. So that was the point here. And when you look at the Old Testament, Paul said the Old Testament was good. He said, "Thou shalt not covet." It taught me that, but it wasn't something that came. It came because there was sin in the world. And we look at that, and you look at the verse 19. It said, "Wherefore serveth the law? It was added because of transgression, till the seed should come, to whom the promise was made." Going back to Abraham, and it was ordained by the angels in the hands of the mediator. So God always meant to send His Son with mercy into the world. Of course, He had mercy back then too as well, but He always intended to send His Son into the world. So anybody that wants to hang on is going to be hung. If they want to hang on to the Old Testament, they want to hang on to those principles in the Old Testament, you're going to be hung. You're going to be hung from a tree, and that tree is going to be eternal damnation, because you're trying to hold on to the tithe. You ain't going back to Jerusalem.
That's right.
You ain't stoning your kids, but you're cherry picking the Old Testament, the things you want, but you got to take it all. Galatians 3:10, 3:11, like you just said. So I just want to enlighten us on that a little bit.
Amen.
Here you go.
I just wanted to say one thing if I could. Thank you, brother.
Sure, brother.
Brother Hamilton said the ultimate eureka is Christianity. I just want to read a verse that validates exactly that. If you look at Hebrews 11 and verse 39, we call this the Hall of Fame, so to speak, a spiritual juggernauts on the earth. But look at verse 39. It says, "And all these all, having obtained a good report through faith, receive not the promise."
Exactly.
That's powerful.
Exactly.
So Brother Hamilton said, verse 40, "And having provided some better thing for us," God having done this, "that they without us should not be made perfect." See, Christianity, as Brother Hamilton said, this is the perfect. This is God's complete finished plan. Christianity is it. There's nothing left to come. There's nothing left to do than to walk in it. So these people that are talking about millennium, they don't understand this verse and what Brother Henson said kills what they're saying. There's nothing else. Christianity is the icing on the cake. This is from God's beginning to now, where the prophet, as he is writing, the man of God, as he is giving us revelation, John says that now the kingdom of heaven is with men, and they will be his people, those that are the believers, not just anybody, and he will be their God. This is it, brethren.
Exactly.
And if a person cannot obey in this, there's nothing left. There's no prayer. There's no return. When he returns, there's nothing to fix. He's not going to say, he's not going to do any explaining of anything that we didn't obey. Brethren, talk about the law will say he's not settling anything. Well, either you're going to heaven or hell, and that's it. And the train is pulling out. So, like he said, this is it. This is what Jesus said. I'm done. He said, many righteous men have wanted to see and hear the things that you see and hear. And the disciples told, you're blessed. And we have it, putting us in a position of we experience it, and John didn't get to experience it. John the Baptist.
Yeah.
And there's no person greater than he. But the least in the kingdom has more than John, the least. Brother, that's why I say, brother, we can't let these denominational cats come up trying to explain to us in the Bible study. They cannot teach this. It isn't in their possession. It's like me talking about rocket science. I am a buffoon on the subject. I'll be laughed to scorn. If I walked in with a rocket punch, they say, this guy, where to get this imbecile, So God bless you. Thank you.
Can't be looking like we be looking with.
Yeah.
Can't you talk like?
Yeah. Amen. That's it. Amen.
So well, as we close, like I said, just to reiterate one of the points I made earlier, when you, like I said, you look at the history and the relationship that God developed with individuals, it was based on the promise that God made with Abraham. Because remember, God is with David. I mean, like I said, I use it. It's one of the most famous stories. David and Goliath. The young boy slays the giant. You know what I mean? And like I said, the Goliath was no punk either, because he wasn't big for nothing. He wasn't like a big Huey type.
That's right.
You know what I mean? He was like, you know what I mean? He's a formidable foe.
That's right.
You know what I mean? How much time I got? Okay, I got 3 minutes. All right. I saw a commercial one time, and I was thinking, there was this LeBron James commercial when he was, they were talking about his fans, like, moving with him or going wherever he go, whatever. And like, so he's running, all the cats are running behind him, whatever. And it's a scene where he's at the beach and he's running to go jump in the water, and he take off his shirt and he's running like full speed, and you see him like head and shoulders above everybody else. And that's at that point you really see the magnitude how big this dude is, right? He is like, he moving like, I mean, that boy moving. He is that boy is a physical specimen. And when I saw that, I thought like Goliath. That's what I thought about. Goliath was bigger than him.
Yeah.
But Goliath, what, like, you see like these guys, they have this. It's a disease called acromegaly, and acromegaly it's called. It's basically like where your growth hormones don't stop. So you see guys like George, if you play NBA, George Muir's son, Andre the Giant.
Yes.
You know, they big, but you know, they features look, they like a giant. It's called giantism. It's like crazy. And so like what happens is the growth hormones get off of their body, they don't turn off. Like when you're a kid, they open, so your bones grow and all that, but after a while it stops and you stop growing. It's supposed to. But with them it don't. So they keep growing and growing and growing. They don't ever stop. They get getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Bones can't support all that weight. They have issues. Heart can't support all, so they die early. But like they big, but they can't really move. You know, they move a little bit. They struggle. You know what I mean? They sick. They have knee braces. But then you see like this dude LeBron James. He's just a humongous dude, but has all that athleticism of regular individual. He's just big. Right. So Goliath is like that.
Right.
Goliath ain't sick.
That's right.
He's a champion. He's been a champion since he was a kid. He was just big, but he can move. He killing people. You know what I mean? Like he's real strong. Like Will Chamberlain type. Will Chamberlain wasn't sick. He was just real tall at 7'1", but he can move around, get around. He was real strong for what they say. It was ridiculous. It's just freaking nature. And so I got to run from this long tangent, but I want to point out, like Goliath was serious business.
Right.
He wasn't like okay, if I'm gonna move around him and just punch him, like whatever. You think the big guy can't really move that way? Yeah, nah, you ain't finna pull it off on him. He been dispatching people since he was a kid. You know what I mean? That's what he do. He's a machine.
That's right.
But the fact that this boy was able to conquer him, he said, man, damn, we read that story and I'm done. We read that story in awe. And it's always an amazing story because, like, this boy comes out, all these men, they scared, they tense, shaking. This boy comes up with bread from his father's house. Like, what's going on? You're naughty, his brother said. You try to come in and see what's going on with the battle. Like, nah, it ain't like that. What's going on? Yeah, he heard Goliath out there screaming. Who gonna come get some? And y'all, just send one of your guys out. Everybody ain't gotta die, man. Just send one of your guys out here to come see me. We'll deal with it one-on-one. I'll put him away. And I'm putting it in 2018 terms. I put him away, and then, y'all can be in surrender, and it's cool. You know what I mean? Everybody ain't gotta die. Just send one of them to die. I deal with him, it's over. You know what I mean? Everybody's scared. Who gonna be the one?
That's right.
Right? Everybody's shook.
Including Saul.
Saul, and he was head and shoulders of everybody else.
Yeah.
He was LeBron James now.
That's
But it was another cat that was head and shoulders above him. He didn't want none.
That's right. Amen.
So then this boy comes walking up with bread from his father's house, like literally riding it or something. And it's like, what's going on? I mean, who is this guy that's screaming, like, talking to trash like this about Israel? Mm-hmm. But that shows his respect for God.
Right.
And the respect of others. You see what I'm saying? Their respect was like, they were thinking live and living color, and like, people were dying. Like, don't get it twisted. People were dying in Israel. Like, when everybody went to battle, everybody came home. Like, people died. So like, it wasn't like the God will protect us. Like, we have some type of magical aura around us, but like, ching, and the sword don't get through. Mm-hmm. Like, my cats was dying, and people lost families, and like people's daddies didn't come home. Like, it's a real legitimate war.
That's right.
It's God when they were victorious in the overall battle. So who want to go out there and fight this dude and like die? He's a scary fella.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? And it ain't just no fist fight. We playing for keeps.
That's right. Amen. That's right.
So anyway, but this boy comes out. He's like, I'll fight him. Can you imagine the thought process? Like, I'll fight him. A boy. And this dude, grown men scared of.
Yeah.
I mean, like when you Bear with me, brother. Y'all give me 3 minutes. 3
Go
minutes.
ahead, preacher.
12:05. I'm done. When you're in grade school, and you a kid, it's cats that straight. It's certain cats that you like, man, put fear in your heart. I remember this cat that I was growing up with. His name was Patrick, and like we were like 6th grade, 7th grade. I was like 5'2", and he was like 5'10". Like it was crazy. His growth spurt was early. He was a year older than us. But he was like 5'10". His boy chiseled. He built like a dadgun tank, and like he's real fast, real strong. He's like the LeBron James among us. He played football, but who wanted to run against him? Everybody just get out of his way. Yeah, man. And his brutality was just out of control. Plus, he's kind of an ornery fella, so he wanted to get out of his way and push into the lockers and stuff. He struck fear in the hearts of the children now. You get older, and then, after you get older, as you become like an adult or whatever, you ain't running around necessarily like scared of cats like that. It's kind of like, hey, man, if we got to go, we'll figure out some type of way to deal with it. But I ain't just running around like, if he's on this aisle, I'm going to run on the other aisle. Like, that's kind of like children do that. But this man reverted men back into boys, man. Like, this dude has hide inside as proverbially under their mother's skirts. And this literal boy comes up and says, I'll fight him. You know what I mean? And I want to say all that to say, we think about how great David, the great faith that he showed, how he's able to overcome this giant and overcome this mountain that no other man want to face. But the reason why God was with him, we don't want to discount David's faith, but the reason why there is an Israel, the reason why David is an Israelite, and the reason why God looks upon David is because of the promise that he made to Abraham.
Amen.
And that's the point that I want to bring in the lesson.
That's right.
It's because God said, if a man has faith like you, I'm going to bless your seed.
Right.
And so we go from the physical, and then it transports into the spiritual. And so now all of us that believe and have the faith that Abraham had, we are counted as the seed of Abraham. We are the children of Abraham. And that same promise that I will be their God, that's the same promise that comes to us. And so let us continue to believe, brother. And that's the lesson. Continue to believe, knowing that God has made a promise and He's gonna keep it. That's right. We always read about. All these stories we read about, that's what we seeing. God keeping His promise, and that promise has come to us. If only we believe. All you gotta do is believe. If you just trust God, then He'll have your back.
Let me say one thing.
Man.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Let me say one thing. Are you all familiar with Beyonce?
Beyonce, the singer.
They got a church named that.
I heard about that.
Wow.
All right, I'm through.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw
Well,
it.
that's it down.
They got a woman preaching, and she's preaching. You need to have the faith of Beyonce,
Wow.
like God.
Okay, that's a little too
Now,
far.
I can bring it.
I saw it, man. I saw it. Yeah.
Now, this is a news flash to me.
Yeah, they came in.
If you hadn't
They
said, I'd
they
be
came into the
questioning
cathedral. They came into the cathedral jamming Beyonce songs.
That's a
And
little
so the
too
people in
far.
the pews singing, everywhere looking on, hey Lord, singing it out in the pews, man. It's out of control. You hear that, brother?
Yes.
Whoa.
Give us closing prayer, man.
Just want to close with this. David had a brother when he met him. His brother said, "Where are those sheep, that you had?" And David was telling him, "Is there not a cause?"
Amen.
Is there not a cause? And his brother was scary to go up against Goliath. And so, in parallel today, in the church, we may have brethren that are scared to deal with something. I remember when we were about to debate Israel United in Christ, where there was a brother who was trying to persuade, leave them alone, leave those, in a sense, to debate those men. And I was looking and very amazed at why, they're going against the God of heaven, the God that we serve.
That's right.
Why should we leave them alone and not embrace this debate,
That's true.
cut their heads off? And this is an example that happens in a church where you have men that are like David's brother,
Yes.
physical brother, or spiritual, where they begin to shake in the knees, like in the scriptures teach, with a man drawn, where they don't want to protect the kingdom that Jesus died for.
Amen.
I just want to close with that.
Good
Amen, my
point.
brother.
Oh, bless you, man.
They don't have to possess the faith necessary for salvation. Go ahead.